Welcome, everybody, to the Exit Is Now podcast. Back with me, your host, Scott Snyder. Today, we have a truly amazing, I call friend now, part of our EPI community, too, a certified exit planning advisor in from Milwaukee, our buddy Michael Sheppard. Michael, thank you for coming out to the show. I really appreciate it and the trip in. So I say kind of an interesting and kind of background and story, and I think that we have a lot to talk about. Formally, you're the group vice president for what do you call the region? The Great Lakes region?
Great Lakes region.
Great Lakes region for Thrivent. Mm-hmm. So he's based out of Milwaukee. We were just talking. We're going up to Summerfest up there, so it's like a 3-day.
You're going to have a blast.
Or for us, it's 3 day, but technically it's like 9. So a 3-day music festival. He's played in the NFL, arena football for the Omaha Beef. I think that is. I was telling you kind of at breakfast this morning. I was up at an EPI event actually, and got to share the stage with, I think it's like the 6th generation of the Omaha Steak Company. So yeah, the Omaha Beef. You've owned your own practice. We're able to successfully sell your practice. And I guess in my own words, I would say, maybe less formally, I would say I think of a true entrepreneur, an educator, a community man, and a family man.
Thank you.
Which I can appreciate. So, and I told you jokingly, but in all seriousness, I guess, you need to write a book. So if you need people to help you write a book, we wrote a couple.
Yeah, but I hear you know a guy.
Yeah, right? But I think that truly somebody that, and I could go so many places. We're going to go down a rabbit hole. I already feel it. Paige is probably shaking her head behind the glass. But I think that you could write like a children's book, right? Because you do a lot of like programming. We'll talk about that. I want to talk about that on the show. I think you could do a more technical book. I think something that literally just hit me 5 minutes ago before we got on the show was the technical side of what we do, whether it's the exit planning side, the financial planning side, but really the technical side starts with the better communication.
Yeah,
I think you can write a book on that. So anyways, we're going to jive on the show around all kinds of different topics, but let's kind of bring it back to the beginning, right? So electrical engineering in college, played a little bit of football,
right,
and then into the financial space. Kind of talk to me about that journey, because I think it's quite interesting.
Yeah, and it didn't necessarily happen by chance. Sometimes it could be divine intervention. So electrical engineering degree, first of all, being raised by my sisters, I did not have a choice. Okay. So it was electrical engineering and then figure out what you want to do. And you have an internship while you do that. And so I had an internship for Fargo Assembly, was in the testing department of a wire harness company, and I didn't necessarily get the best taste in my mouth. I was in a room with no windows, a couple other guys poking wires, and I said, there's no chance I'm doing this for the rest of my life. And then I got recruited to sell Cutco knives. And I really enjoyed the sales process and going door to door. And I first sold all of my coaches, and I had to really prepare and bring it so that they would buy something. And I made a good amount of money in that, and I had joy. So I said, you know what? When I decide to do my career, I want it to be more sales oriented.
Okay.
And so I'm playing for the Omaha Beef.
While doing all of this stuff.
Why? So I got my degree.
Yeah.
I'm playing for the Omaha Beef. I got cut from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we had lost in the playoffs. And I said, I'm going to apply to jobs. And so I applied for all the big companies in Milwaukee, and I typed in electrical engineer, and one organization, which was a finance organization, I typed in electrical engineer and it said financial representative. You should be one. And I was like, okay, I don't know what that is. And it said, you're basically selling life insurance. Life insurance can impact families. And I know maybe we'll get into my story, but losing 2 moms and then being raised from 12 on by my sisters, I was like, wow, I could sell something that could help other families have less pain than I did when the unexpected happens. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll apply. I applied, closed my computer. Within 10 minutes, I got a phone call. The next day I had an interview. And 2 months after that, I was full-on financial advisor. Forget electrical engineering. I'm just going to take the concepts, think smarter, not harder, and apply them to being a financial advisor, helping families plan for the unexpected.
And so did you have to did you go back to school? Did you get all the licenses? Did they help you start getting acclimated to this? Because it's kind of technical, in my opinion, right?
It is. And they did help me get the licenses. They had a great training program. I think it actually helped me personally with my finances. I was an entrepreneur in college, made a good amount of money, but it all went to subs in the trunk and leather seats in the Honda Accord. And I probably needed somebody to guide me and educate me on smart financial decisions. And since I chose it as a career, it helped me learn more about what I needed to do while helping others learn what they need to.
Yeah, and you're what, 20 years or almost 20 years?
Almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years.
See the gray hairs in my beard?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. I was one of the things that I think too is super unique is that at a pretty young age still, you've successfully then came out of the more formal financial advisory world with all the brand names that we kind of know, started your own financial advisory practice, were able to grow that in a short amount of time, and then sell it and get to the place where you're at today. Can you talk to us about that a little bit?
Yeah, I felt that I had a great foundation of how to do business, who to do business with, great training from some really large organizations. One of the things that I wanted to differentiate is lead with fee-based planning, and then also reflect the markets that we serve. So a lot of times we use diversity and inclusion as a marketing play, and don't necessarily attach results oriented to that like we do. Hey, you're going to sell X amount of life insurance. You're going to sell X amount of investments. You're going to bring this amount of money in. And so I said, you know what? I feel like I can do better. And I want to reflect the market and show that we could be just as big, just as profitable, grow just as fast, but do it with beautiful people who are women, people of color, white, and actually reflect the type of people that we work with. And so we started with employee 1 in March of 2019, which was me. And then we grew to 16, and I couldn't make this up, Scott. So at our height, we were 8 and 8. We had 2 white females, 6 white males, 2 black females, 2 black males, 2 Hispanic females, 2 Hispanic males. If I would have said that at the start, probably would have got laughed out of rooms. But it just ended up that way. And I think when you lead with purpose, when you work with intention, you usually get what you want. And if you don't do things by design, they'll just default to what they always have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what a hell of a time to start a business too. Like I was just like writing some notes. I was like, as I thought about your story, you said March of 19, right?
That's right.
So then a year later, we're shutting down the country for our pandemic.
Right.
And the markets were all kind of all over the place, right?
Yeah.
Like how was that? How'd you navigate that as a business
crazy.
owner? Really, as a business owner.
I had worked my whole career to get to the point where I can start my own firm, and then the world ends, and it's like, this is the absolute worst time. I can't talk to anybody, and most people aren't going to give you $1 million if you don't look them in the eye, shake their hand, and have a good conversation. We were very fortunate that, we had focused on retirement plans, and we had really worked in the small business market. And I always loved to lead with education. And so in that time period where the world shut down and people didn't know what was going on, we doubled down on education. We went out and did a lot of financial literacy education virtually. We set up the office to be virtual right away. We recruited advisors virtually. We were driving up and dropping off paperwork to sign on a ledge, and then they would come pick it up. It was bananas. But I think people appreciated that when everything had hit the fan, we were there to talk to them. And we gave them strategies in that time to protect themselves. We talk about focusing on the long-term plan, and we did it enough times. So we started at, it was COVID started mid-March. We did education at the end of March. We did education mid-April. We did education in May. And so we saw at least 3,500 employees 4 times before we were in this 30 days. While I was at home doing TikTok dances with my kids.
Yeah, right.
I would,
because you shut down your office. You had to shut down your office.
Everything.
Yeah.
I learned how to play guitar.
Really?
But
that's cool.
We doubled down on education. I think people appreciated that. We were there when they needed us.
I think I think it's interesting, right? I think one of the things, I think there's actually a few things that me and you kind of jive on a little bit. One is education, right? Like EPI is a professional education company, right? It's one of the things we're passionate about. And just hearing you talk too, kind of listening through EPIs, it's kind of same type of thing. As we were growing EPI, I would say 2019, we kind of hit our stride at EPI. We had that year, we had ended 2019 with like 9 SEPA programs. Remember, because you came through the virtual program,
right?
All in person. So I was traveling like 225 days out of the year, and what felt really good at the time, right? We were really like, cranking out programs, had a good summit event. And then kind of in your scenario too, like March hits and you're like, oh my gosh, like you had just started your business.
Yeah.
And although EPI had been around for a long time, it was really 2018 when we got our stride. So it was almost like a startup business. That's how Chris and I kind of feel about it, at least. And then in March of 2020, we kind of get slapped. We canceled the Georgia State University program. We canceled the Cleveland, Ohio program and the University of Chicago Booth School of Business program 3 months in a row. We had like 300-400 advisors waiting to go to SEPA programs with no delivery mechanism. So that like March and April was a hell of a turn. But then in May of that year, we started really investing in education, not necessarily out into the world, but we looked at our team internally and said, okay, there was at the time maybe 15 of us. And we said, look, I think that we need to do some soul searching, some more purposeful living. You could tell that we were super burnt out from pivoting the company.
Yeah.
And we invested really hard into education. I think a lot of people really appreciate that. Like when you said, it made me think of that story for me. When you said, I think people really appreciated that we were there. So I think most business owners, at least internally, when you look at professional development, they're cutting budgets, right? Because they're worried. Right. Where me and Chris said, okay, let's take 150 grand. And while we're kind of burnt out, kind of re-engage. And honestly, it changed. You hear me talk about this all the time in our EPI community. It really changed the way that we operated. Going on at that time too, and I was just making some notes as you get taking me down memory lane here because it's only 3 years ago, but it was like pretty impactful time. A lot going on in our country too. Sure and was. I was talking to you before the show, but in my research, you're a certified financial planner, a CFP. There's 95,000 CFPs. I think they said they're going to get to 100,000 this year. But 1.89% of them are black. So that means that there's less than 1,800 people out there in that group. And thinking about the pandemic, what's going on in our country at that time, thinking about what you were talking about, the 16 of you. And maybe it's just me being naive, right? The white guy at the table. But it's like it has to be wildly difficult to do what you're doing during that time and be in such a small group of certified financial advisors. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I agree. And it's the beautiful thing is when they first came out with the study in 2018, there was 1,100. So we've added 700.
That's the article
which is a huge progress. However, we need more women and people of color in finance in general. Sure. And the one thing that I always say that artificial intelligence can't take away is person-to-person accountability and making someone feel comfortable with sharing something so close to them as their finances that we usually keep really close to the vest with someone that they care about. And we want to make sure that there's plenty of options for people to do that. And so I am a firm believer in planning. I think that the CFP professional is a great designation for people to get. And I think that more people need to because it broadens your learning on ways that you can serve whatever client base that you choose to serve. And I'm happy to see that there are more of us. But I think we can accelerate that pace. I think we can at least pace along with what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, and I think that, just kind of going kind of off the cuff here, like you do a lot of educational programming. There's another thing that I think we have in common is we talked about this community involvement. But even the things like you did, can you talk to the program that you did where you brought in your high school, the high school that you went to?
Right.
You brought in kids a couple of years ago, I think it was, that you had let them tour your office. And if you haven't seen his office, you got to check out his LinkedIn and go to his featured post because you have a super cool office.
Thank you.
And you brought the kids there. And to your point, I'll let you describe the story. You got the music playing, the kids coming in, and you're showing them something. And it's like, I think more stuff like that inspires people to maybe go into our profession or do other things.
Absolutely. I think representation is key. And so there were a couple reasons that I did that. First, I think it's great to see someone that looks like you at a high level. So I try not to diminish the burden that I have, that there are going to be some children that are looking up to me. And so I would always go out to schools and I would tell my story because I've had a little bit of a rocky road, losing parents early. It was not a paved road for me to be successful.
Not a straight line. That is
not a straight line. So I want to make sure that people know that, I share my authentic self because my story could be some of their stories. And so I would go out to schools and I would talk about my journey and I would talk about what I'm doing from a career standpoint. And I was sitting in an auditorium one time, Scott, and I said, you know what? I think I could do better. Now I'm an entrepreneur. Milwaukee was a little bit on fire at the time, and everybody's talking about kids are lazy and participation trophies are ruining it all. And I heard a whole bunch of complaints and no solutions. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to put out a post on LinkedIn, and any inner city school or any charter school, 30 kids at a time, on my dime, I will send out a private shuttle, a big limo bus with leather seats that they probably have not sat in before. Bring them to my office. We had 17th floor with panoramic views of Milwaukee and you see the lake. And for 2 hours, I'm just going to speak life into them. They're going to walk in, there'll be music playing, and I'll let them run around and, take selfies, sit in my chair so I can look them in the eye and say, you could do this earlier than I did. And then sit them down after feeding them for an hour and just speak life into them. And it was to be a really good, memorable experience because kids need to touch things. We talk about things.
Totally.
And as soon as they experience it, they remember it. And on the office doors to my office, it says, believe you can and dream big. And so I wanted them all to see that, sit in my chair, and then they left with a wristband that said, believe you can and dream big, as a little takeaway and to make this a more memorable experience that they remember. And here's where I think this helps with CFPs.
Yes.
I don't think that there are kids that are saying, you know what? I want to grow up and be an exit planner. I want to work with business owners. I want to grow up and I want to be a financial advisor. I want to sell insurance.
It's probably not.
They're not going over that in PE.
Right.
And so, or personal finance is typically not taught in economics.
Right.
But now we had 300 kids in 30 days come through the office. 300 kids, 30 at a time. I still do it to this day.
Yeah.
And I know that someone from that audience is going to be an entrepreneur and they didn't have the confidence before to do it. Someone's going to say, you know what? Maybe finance is a good career. Maybe I can have an office like this. Maybe I can be a certified financial planner. Maybe I can work with business owners. But absent that experience, I don't think that little nugget, that seed was planted in their mind for them to think of finance as a career.
So tell your story about it. You've kind of alluded to it a bit. And I didn't actually know it until about a month ago when you were on stage at our Exit Planning Summit doing a power session. And we'll certainly get to that. For those of you that were there, you absolutely nailed it. I was jotting down notes in the back myself. But I think, tell your story a little bit, because what's always on my mind is that I don't know if you saw yourself in the shoes that the kids are in, but what nuggets, what motivation, along your career through childhood into college and now as a successful exited business owner, a group vice president, your journey wasn't easy either, right? Yeah. Not a straight line, not a paved road, but what gave you those kind of nuggets or those elements of success? When you sit, I could totally see what you're saying, where the kid is sitting in your chair and you're sitting across from them. And there's that feeling, that impact. Because you're right. Out of those 30 kids in each group, 1 or 2 of them will be like, that changed my life.
Yeah.
Or I will remember it when the train, I will look at that bracelet. I'll remember that guy's doors when you walk into the office. What were some of those moments for you?
So we're in Cleveland, Ohio. I was born just a little bit away from here in Dayton, Ohio,
right.
On Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. My biological mother was Rita Johnson. She had 3 boys, Sean, Jimmy, Michael, reached 7 years apart. But she passed away from a brain aneurysm 11 days after I was born. No will, no life insurance.
11 days?
11 days. Poor family. And so my brothers were raised by our grandmother. And then I was adopted by my aunt, Diane, who was married to Sam Sheppard. They were significantly older. So at the time, Diane was 40, Sam was 53. Sam had fought in 3 wars. He was born in 1928, to give you an idea of how I was raised. But it was decided that I was going to be raised in that family. So I moved from Dayton, Ohio to Trenton, New Jersey, then Trenton, New Jersey to Fayetteville, North Carolina, and then to Troy, Illinois. And then while in Troy, Illinois, unfortunately, Diane passed away at 52 from Legionnaire's disease, which was actually the COVID of that time. It was this crazy disease that was going around American legions. And so, the PTSD had come back from my dad. He had just lost his wife. He had this rambunctious 11-year-old.
Yeah, so I was going to ask, you're 11.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for about, I was there for about a year, and then it was best for me to be raised by my sister, who was actually, so Sam and Diane had 2 daughters.
Okay.
And so they're my cousins.
Okay.
But it's the only mom I know, only dad I know, and
those are more like your sisters, right?
And so Gwen was stationed on Edwards Air Force Base in California City, California. So I moved to California City, California. Mind you, in all this time, making new friends, losing friends, new communities, new climate. So I'm in the Mojave Desert. And then we moved from California City, California to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where my other sister, Verda, was working for Harley Davidson. And so 8th grade through high school was Brown Deer. Now, part of that story, that was a lot of trauma. And I didn't necessarily have a safe place to talk about it.
Right.
And so I had that period where I was the lost kid, and I needed the spark. And somebody did that for me. And it was someone that came in, They had a nice suit on. They sounded good. They looked good. And I said, you know what? I want to be that. And I don't remember what they said, but the feeling was I could be successful. Yeah. And from that day on, I wore suits to like every football game. It's
so how old are you at the time, do you think, when that made that impact?
I would say 14.
So you're like 8th grade, freshman year, somewhere in that time frame. And you see that gentleman in that suit.
Right. And I'm like, that's
and you were in suits to high school football games. People are probably like, what's this guy's deal?
And so I did the same in college too. The suits are bad. Do not research them. If they were brown, I looked like a deacon. So it's bad. But for me to pay it forward, I wanted to give the youth what was given to me. So someone was a multiplier in my life and they don't even know it. And I feel like I owe it that, since it had such a big impact on me and set me on the right path and allowed me to focus on the positive and to embrace that I've never been the most talented, but I've typically been the most disciplined, and give that to our youth because someone may need that spark. And the crazy thing, we at the first 16 schools that we did, 9 of the 16 had someone who had lost their mom. So when I told my story,
they can connect
someone
with
would
you.
just break into tears, or they come in afterwards and be like, you know what, I lost my mom too. And they will never forget that experience.
Yeah, you were able to really connect with them. That's really special, man. I know. I think that, I think they're all kind of set. I think that we're gifted with all different types of talents and skill sets, but I never think, and I was raised in a pretty Catholic Christian family. I think that, I don't think we're ever made to just harness those for ourselves. I think that there's certainly skills and talents that we have that will allow us to be successful if we can really put them to use in the right ways. But then it's time to give back as well. And I just think that that's so special for you, because a guy like you gave you that spark when you were 14, and now you're doing it with the high school kids in a super deliberate, intentional way too. I mean, you're like, to your point, like I can imagine that getting into the office, seeing and again, office has there's a culture there that you can feel. Getting in on a limo bus and coming in, that's just got to be super cool.
And I think I always tell this story. I still get the chills whenever I meet with an owner of a business. I go into your office, I go into any private business owner's office. It just feels good.
Yes.
And none of them are saying, hey, Michael, why don't you come sit in this chair? You can run a business like this.
Yeah, right.
And I think that needs to be said. I also think it's important for kids to see people that are still in the hunt hunt professionally. Okay. So typically, you wait until you've retired and now you've got time, and that's when people are most philanthropic, but it's still a little bit far removed from what they could be. And I want to see more people in the grind while they're building a business, while they're working hard, so they actually see what needs to be done to get there, and they don't just see the final product.
Right.
I am nowhere near a final product. I am still in the hunt professionally. I have a lot to learn. Yeah. There are a lot of things that I don't understand. And I want them to know that about me, because one of the things that I think is one of my best traits is I'm willing to learn. Yeah. I'm willing to be coachable. Yeah. I'm humble enough to say I don't know. Yeah. And I'm willing to ask the questions that need to be asked. So I want them to have that skill, because if you understand how to learn, you will always get better.
Well, I think that you have that opportunity now at Thriving, right? I think that's one of the reasons that we were talking at breakfast this morning, that transition that you had into that company, I think really matches your core value and maybe those next things that you have to learn, or the next kind of journeys in your life. And I want to pause there and dive into that next, maybe get in a little bit more technical side of what you do, what we do as certified exit planning advisors. So everybody kind of stick with us. We'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Walking to Destiny was written to arm business owners and their advisors with the knowledge and understanding needed to recognize their potential, execute growth tactics, and harvest the wealth locked inside a business. Originally written in 2016 by the creator of the Value Acceleration Methodology, Chris Snyder, Walking to Destiny 2.0 features a fresh and evolved look into the proven system to maximize value, grow income, and build a business that can be run without you, even if you never plan to leave. Discover how to align your business, personal, and financial goals. Distinguish between your business's attractiveness and readiness to transition. Measure the value of your intangible assets that likely contribute 80% of your company's value. Adopt a process to measure your results every 90 days. Walking to Destiny is the foundation for the Exit Planning Institute's Certified Exit Planning Advisor Credentialing Program. More than 5,000 advisors hold the CEPA designation, the world's leading exit planning credential. Grab your copy of Walking to Destiny 2.0 by visiting www.wtddownloads.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Exit Is Now podcast, hanging out with Michael Sheppard. I want to continue the conversation. So we left before the break, and we were talking about this transition, right? Now we're saying we gave a little bit of the history. We've built Ironwood, and we have now moved into Thrivent. And getting, for people that know you well, I think that I don't necessarily know you well, but I think I know enough to say that it seems like that's a huge opportunity for you, because I think that it's a place where, frankly, it just really represents who you are, between the community work that we were talking about before the break with your high school. You were talking about the cool charitable stuff that they were doing. At the summit, we raised $55,000 for the Phoenix Children's Hospital Autism Division. Yeah. And so I just think that transition into that group is just a huge opportunity for the next kind of steps for your career. Can you just kind of talk about that and why that matters?
Yeah, I mean, I think the beautiful thing about exit planning is it prepares you to understand what's next while focusing on the present and increasing the value of what you do. And I was presented with an opportunity where I finally found a company that all the things that I was already doing, it matched. And the way it was presented to me is, we really love the impact that you're making. We think that you can make an even larger impact with our resources, with the infrastructure, and with the team that we can put behind you. And so, just to tell a little bit about Thrivent, I've worked for some really great organizations, all of them philanthropic, but none of them said, "Hey, Michael, why don't you tell us how you want to make the world a better place?"
I think that's awesome.
It was we want to focus on Alex's lemonade stand, or leukemia lymphoma.
Yeah, right.
And those are all great causes and should be funded and have needs. One of the things that Thrivent does is they say, you know what? For every employee, for every advisor, we're going to give you a dollar for dollar match up to $20,000 for you to go make the world a better place in the way that you see fit. Because our core guiding value is that money is a tool. It's not just money for money. We're not just trying to sell a whole bunch of things. Money is a tool for you to benefit your family, for you to benefit your community, for you to make a world a better place in the way that you see fit. And generosity is one of our tenets. And so we want to influence generosity by not only showing you how, but putting our money where our mouth is. So that's one of the ways, right? Another way is called action teams. And so for everyone that's a Thrivent member, for every person in their household who's 16 or older, twice a year, they get a $250 gift card to just go make the world a better place, whether that's helping the local high school out with Gatorades and bananas for the bus ride, or someone beats breast cancer in the neighborhood and you want to be supportive. And then there's Thrivent Choice Dollars, where just for being a member, money will be put into your account for you to go be generous. And so I really resonated with the plan beyond profit. It's one thing to have a really good process and have really good people, another to have world-class products, another to be, a 100-year institution with, great finances, but to go beyond all of those things that pretty much every big company has, and to say that we want to be generous in the world and make it a better place in the way that our people see fit, not just how we are, I thought that was just amazing.
The things I'm writing down right now, and I don't know if there are already Thrivent copyrighted, but I'm saying these are your books, right? So this does describe you. Like, money is a tool. Like that describes you. Like that could be your book title. Or like a plan beyond profit. That totally describes you too. So yeah, there's like this natural synergy. So how are you guys working with business owners? So obviously, as a certified exit planning advisor, the focus for us is that small to lower middle market business owners, helping owners live a more successful, significant life as a current, to your point, today as an entrepreneur, but building something for significance in the years to come, whenever that is. So, and for you, I do feel that you in particular and Thrivent really embrace that whole business, personal, and financial, that traditional three legs of the stool approach that we teach as CEPAs. How are you guys helping owners do just that at Thrivent?
I think for people who work with Thrivent, they typically connect with our mission, our vision, our values, a lot like other companies. But we naturally talk about the plan beyond profit. We naturally talk about significance. And when you start with money as a tool, it's no different than with exit planning. Your business, your idea, your entrepreneurship is a tool to employ people who can take care of their families, to create value and differentiate in the marketplace so that people's lives are easier, to eventually exit and benefit the next generations of their families. So it really ends up being a natural conversation. We have about 3,000 advisors nationwide. A good portion of them work with small businesses in small communities and big communities. And we work with them no different than we work with individuals. Yeah. So, we start with advice. It's an advice-driven process. It's understanding where they're at, where they want to go, what they want to accomplish. And I think the big thing, which I love that, the Exit Now is Now podcast covers, what SEPA covers, is the emotions of being ready to exit and what happens after you exit, because post-sale emotions are a whole different thing.
We were talking about that at breakfast.
And I think, you've got the business attractiveness, business readiness, and owner readiness. I think the owner readiness is a big key, and that really happens in the relationship that you have with your trusted value advisors.
Talk about your exit, because as an exited owner myself, I felt the same thing. You talked about having your sign taken down from your office. So though he sold his practice, he's still in the same offices, just with a new logo. Right. Just talk about that as an exited owner. Well, what's that emotion like?
So Ironwood Drive is the street that I lived on after my second mom passed away. Yeah. And so that was a time in my life where I needed to focus on the positive. I had lost my comfort zone, and I really had to decide what I wanted life to be. And I wanted to channel those emotions when I became an entrepreneur, because there was no more cushy, corporate salary. There was no corporate card. It was all on my own and my own expenses. And so, Ironwood Drive Financial Group, IFG, that signage was all over the office. And so, I feel that our business was attractive. I felt like the business was ready. As an owner, I felt like it was good time for a little bit more security and to take some chips off the table. But when that I and that F came down, it is just, those are emotions that you can't necessarily prepare for. Right. That even though you've done things hopefully in the most appropriate way, that you have an emotional tie to something that you built. There are some serial entrepreneurs where they're like, you know what, I'm going to do this exit thing over and over and over again, and I can get over that. And there's some where you have a personal connection to it. And even in our curriculum, you talked about you want to do it in the right way, because you've got to go to the grocery store with some of the employees that might have worked for your business.
I know, man.
So those are some pretty significant emotions to get through, and it's always better as a value advisor to have those conversations.
And have them early and often. I can tell you, dude, when for those of you that see glimpses of our studio, all the stuff that's around here are things that are not necessarily EPI related, right? They're really more about who I am as a person, so that people watching the show and jumping on our YouTube channel can kind of see kind of what I'm about. But behind you is my landscaping sign, right? So we had like an old warehouse so I didn't have a big sign, right? But I could tell you, when I saw the yard signs start popping out of the ground, because it was a new company, a new name, but I saw the same guys still planting the trees or laying the mulch or mowing the grass, I could tell you, and it was here in my community in Cleveland, right? So it's not like I could get away from it. I didn't have I didn't transition immediately into something else, right? Like I'm in something totally different than landscaping today. But I had like those 2 years that were just like, maybe not 2, maybe about a year before my dad asked me to come into his consulting firm. But I can remember just driving around, seeing my guys in different uniforms with different colors and different signs popping out of the ground. Or my phone was ringing, and they're like, "Hey, Scott, you did this great deck for us last year. We want to redo the front now." And I'm like, I don't own that company anymore. I got to refer you to this. It is something that you can't, you can talk about it, right? To your point, we could talk about what that might feel like, but when you go through it as an owner, it's just something totally
And it's funny.
different.
Sometimes, you have those clients that don't care. Like, I don't care where you are. You're my guy.
Yeah, like, I don't care. Well, can you still just come out? Do you still own the truck? Can you get out here? And I'm like, no, that's all gone.
Yeah, it's like, you sell your house and you see the happy family driving in the driveway, and you're like, enjoy my house.
Right, exactly. Yeah, right. So one of the things you kind of alluded to, and I thought it hit me actually, we were just in the conference room before the show talking to some of with you and some of our EPI folks, getting into, I asked you kind of what you're doing at Thrive and how we're working with owners, and you said something that kind of hit me, right? It's like, before we even get super technical, we have to have very good communication with the owner because, frankly, whether the owner's listening to the show or not, I guess as a fellow owner, I'll admit it first that you just don't know. You just don't know. And it's okay to raise your hand and say you don't know. But I'll tell you, Michael, that I was at a couple of conferences this year so far that were owner facing, and the amount of people that don't pause to educate and communicate the right way, you're just totally losing me. Because I'm just like, guys, I was laughing with you. It's another example. I was laughing with you when I was building out my dad's estate plan, right? And we had like a couple of attorneys. Both guys have been close to our family for a long time. They're great guys. We had our CPA in there as well. And me being younger in the room, right, they're jiving. And my dad's the guy that created the value acceleration methodology, right? He's like an idol to me. He's like almost like a whole glossary and dictionary of terms. So I'm like, I don't know what the hell they're talking about right now. I'll just ask Dad over that Bloody Mary after we get done with this. And I was laughing with you because we're sitting there having that Bloody Mary. And I was like, Dad, there's a couple things that I didn't really get. He goes, yeah, all right, shoot. And I was like, Dad, what about this? And he goes, oh, I didn't know what they were talking about either. I'm like, you're the exit planning guy. What do you mean? These are your peers as a fellow advisor. But like you were teaching us in the conference room, you kind of got to slow down to speed up and know that a lot of owners, very prideful, very talented, they don't know stuff. So can you talk, they don't know these more technical terms. So talk about this kind of slowing down to speed up before you dive into the technical. You got to get some good communication down first.
Right. You know, every NBA game we're, about to witness the NBA finals, they will start with the layup line.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Extremely simple. They will start dribbling the ball to warm up their wrists. They will stretch. Most elite people are really good at what they do. They may not know things outside of what they do. And a lot of the things that we know that we do on a daily basis, that's not their job. They didn't wake up to understand all of our lingo. And so I think there is tremendous benefit in breaking things down to the how and breaking it down to the first brick that you lay. Because what happens is you get two alpha personalities in a room and I'm trying to show off and tell you how smart I am. And I know all this great value acceleration. They're like, I've never heard that before. That sounds really cool. And then, you're listening to this and acting like you know what I'm talking about because you're the same personality that I am. Like, I've heard of that. I know exactly what EBIT does. As a matter of fact, I got a couple of them.
Exactly.
And so,
exactly right.
And then you get in this conversation and you don't ever get to the learning and to the how. And so I always like to break it down. And if I am talking to novice, I can read the room and understand, maybe take it up a level. Right. But I always want to say, here's what it is. Here's the how, down to, here's the difference between the profit and loss statement and the balance sheet and how that impacts what your recast is. Exactly. And this matters because of this. And yes, I want to pump my chest and you saved a bunch on taxes, but that may not be impacting the value that you want for your business in the right manner. And so we may want to look at things a little bit differently. And so I just think it takes a little bit of, you have to have pride in your practice and in your gift to talk about it as if you just learned it.
It's true. It's so true.
I think we believe that we over communicate and we're actually under communicating. Because we're not speaking the same language.
Well, it's also not simplified. Like when I was looking at your LinkedIn, you have some great content there. One of the things as an owner now, not as somebody that not buddies, not fellow SEPAs, as an owner, learning about how you implement what you learned as a SEPA and your craft as a financial advisor. You talked about diversification of your portfolio and you simplified it all the way down to your music playlist, your Spotify list or whatever you have. And for me, one of the things that hit me inside the SEPA program that related this diversification was Sean Hutchinson, one of our instructors, talks about if you are growing a business's value and you're purely focused on business, which is where a lot of us go, right? Because our business typically comes out, it's not valued at the way we need it to be to get to close that wealth gap. So we start really focused on building value in the business. And if you're only building value in that business, he calls it the Pac-Man eating away at your other wealth, right? So if you're not maybe taking some chips off the table or taking some of that excess cash and reinvesting, your business actually becomes more valuable and then starts eating away at the other financial assets that you have. So going back to this diversification of your financial portfolio, like a music playlist on Spotify, I just thought it was such an interesting way it was like,
Yeah, my kids don't think I'm funny, but I think that sometimes I make good jokes, and I like things to be memorable. And so when I was a kid, we went on a lot of long road trips, and I like to drive. You experience sort of like you going to
RV
summer
trips,
fest
man.
in your RV.
Yeah.
You see the world a little bit differently when you drive through it.
It's true.
But if you only have one artist in your playlist, you might fall asleep.
It is.
An hour or two, you might start rubbing your eyes if you didn't switch up, the country music for a little bit more high tempo.
Yeah, right.
You can have your chill radio, down tempo, and deep house.
Yeah.
But then once you're settled in, you might want to, change it up to something a little bit different. And if your playlist has many different artists and many different things in it, then it makes it a little bit more enjoyable journey. And our business owners who have highly concentrated value in their business, this isn't saying that you shouldn't put money into it.
Sure.
It's just be aware that there are other options and there are other ways to help your wealth journey as you go along. And no different than individuals who need to do the same.
I laugh when you give the example of us driving up to Wisconsin for this music fest. We just got back a while ago from the Indy 500, right? So I'm the only one that drives this motor coach bus thing that I have, right? And I got everybody in the back of the RV. And I was telling you at breakfast, I'm a pretty one-lane guy when it comes to, it's like a lot of like either classic rock or country for me. But if you play that for 6 hours straight on the way home from the Indy 500, the rest of the RV is just out cold in the back because I just never change it up. Although my family loves that style and genre of music. Playing it for 6 hours, they're like, Scott, I think we heard this song 3 times. I was like, that's one of my favorite songs, though.
Right?
People fall asleep. But no, I do think that that is a great way to talk about it.
It's just an example of keeping things simple.
It is.
It is. People will know how smart you are by the type of questions you ask, not necessarily all the things that you spew out.
Exactly.
And you got to humble yourself down a little bit. I remember when I first got my CFP, I wanted to go tell everybody how smart I was. Nobody was listening.
Yeah, right.
And then, as value advisors, it's our job to get people talking. And
one of the biggest things is it's collaboration and education, communication, and it's something you're actually really good at. So it's a fit. It is. Talk about, like, you were talking to me about when you came out of the SEPA program. I asked you as a SEPA, maybe where are some struggle points or needs in another conversation. You told a story about how you got the SEPA and then started going out and educating people, the gaps, the legs, value acceleration. Can you talk about that? Because it's a great example of education.
Yeah, I think when we started working with business owners post SEPA, where we had the methodology, I didn't want to make the same mistake with the CFP, where it's like I want to just talk and tell you all these things.
Yeah.
But I think with the methodology it helped me to ask the right questions, open up a conversation where I can explain what the value gap is and how that impacts the wealth gap, and what are some of the things that they can implement, whether it's locking up their management team, whether it's understanding how their finances are and being able to turn them around in good time when somebody asks. Because there are so many nuggets and so many lanes that you can go down when you have this methodology. But where you want to find is which part of the lane is the least understood by the owner.
Right.
And then give them the nuggets that they need, because the beautiful thing about small business owners is they act, right?
They do,
especially when it comes to
that.
their asset that is going to change the lives of their family and their community.
100%.
And so when you change the conversation to value, everything that you say is valuable. And
it's true.
And when an owner finds value, they turn to action.
Yeah.
That's why they are who they are.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we ended up doing well, is finding where there was an understanding that needed more conversation and communication, and gave safe space for any question to be answered. You never want to put yourself above. I know I'm this, I'm that.
Yep,
It's like,
exactly.
It's like we want to help your business do better.
Yeah.
We want your experience to be good. We want your people to be tied. We want your lifestyle to be as you design it, after exit, pre-exit.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that, again, I think many advisors, we always talk about this intrigue and empower behavior. I think the common behavior for many advisors today is to tell owners the right answers. And I'm actually not even saying that's bad. Like when we talked about our estate plan, like I need you to kind of tell me the right answers here. Like I probably need a little bit of education, but I need you to kind of tell me the right answers. When I need my taxes done, I just kind of need you to tell me the right answer.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about this combination of business, personal, and financial, you're talking about this, for a lot of us, this kind of baby that we we birthed and then raised all the way through its life, and now it's time to send them off to be adults or exit our company. And what we now talk about in EPI, the success to significance, I think most owners would say that they have something of like they feel successful.
Right.
But then you're going to tell them that their baby's ugly, that they don't have something of significance, right? And they're like, wait, what are you talking about? I think the slow down, the speed up, rather than dive into the technical, spend some time educating, intriguing, and empowering the owner, that unleashes the action that I think business owners have.
I agree. And I think sometimes it's not telling the right answer. They might not know the right question.
Exactly right.
You know, it's like, I have an electrical engineering degree. There was no economics course. I did not know the right questions to ask about finances. You know, we're a couple cool guys. You know, we spend time sharing each other's estate plan. I'm sure you guys do that all the time. But I didn't know. I knew the vision of what I wanted, and in a collaborative process for that estate plan, it ended up being drafted to something that was pretty cool. But the immediate answer to that estate plan might be something that doesn't accomplish the same goals. That doesn't get down to the how of, you know, when my children have kids, every 4 years, they can buy a vehicle that seats 7 and take $50,000 out of their trust. You know, that's funded by life insurance. You know, that didn't, that part is the technical part that you don't get to if you don't get to the authenticity of why did I want to do it.
Exactly.
You know, because I didn't always have the money to do it. It was when we bought our first vehicle for our kids, it was expensive. I was like, man, how do you do this?
How do you,
You know, I want to make it easier without, you know, ruining my kids with too much money.
Right.
That's why they got to give the money first before they get anything.
You know? We could probably go down a whole nother episode with this guy's estate plan. He actually ended up sharing it with us pre-show because we were talking about my estate plan or our family's estate plan, I should say, with my dad and my mom. I want to take a quick break, and I want to come back as you got to know Michael maybe over the last 30 or 40 minutes. There's a lot going on with this guy. So I want to come back and I want to talk about another thing that I think many entrepreneurial advisors, business owners struggle with, which is this blend and balance of life. So we'll be back in just a quick couple of minutes. Stick with us.
Get ready to uncover innovative solutions, build deeper relationships, and share transformational experiences at the Exit Planning Summit this May in Scottsdale, Arizona. The Summit is the world's largest exit planning-centric event, bringing together professional advisors and their teams from around the globe. It is the premier conference for people committed to working with business owners, accelerating business value, aligning personal and financial strategies for the business owners, and collaborating with the top professionals in the market today. The transformative experience does not stop when the sessions end. Immerse yourself in a distinctive lifestyle experience that transcends expectation. Join us at the magnificent 5-diamond resort, the Phoenician, the premier luxury hotel in Scottsdale. Immerse yourself in breathtaking views, impeccable service, and unparalleled amenities. Curate a distinctive resort experience infused with a retreat-like ambiance that transforms your well-being. Learn more and reserve your spot now at www.exitplanningsummit.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So before the break, I said one of the things that I think we all kind of struggle with, or maybe you got it down, is this balance of life. We talk about it in formality in the SEPA program as this balance between business, personal, and financial. In reality, I think as leaders, as business owners, we have various, within those, there's a bunch of different subcategories. Mm-hmm. I had Justin Goodbread on the show early on in our podcast, and he challenged me there to say, he goes, Scott, I don't think you're ever actually in balance. And I was like, what do you mean? We hear about this work-life balance all the time. He goes, what I describe it as with his wife back home is we're always trying to have a blend and an alignment. So it's like, undoubtedly, think about your life, Scott. You probably spend most of your time with the EPI folks running your business. It's where you spend most of your time. So naturally, you're just already unbalanced. You're not balanced, right?
Right.
But do you feel between your business stuff, your family stuff, your personal life, trying to go out and fulfill dreams outside of the business, your community life, do you feel you have a right blend? So I'd like to get your opinion on that, and then say, as a community leader, as the group leader at Thrive-In, as a business owner, as a family man, a dad, how do you keep it all aligned?
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult.
It is.
And, for the owners out there, for the advisors out there, I don't think that there is imbalance.
Right.
And I don't think that there's a perfect solution.
Yeah.
I am imperfect. But what I try to do is design it the best way for what we want. There are things that I am so passionate about that they give me life.
Yeah.
And I think my family appreciates that gives me life. But, they don't always like it.
Right.
And so,
Yeah.
It's
all those golf rounds that you play.
Yeah. And golf is like my peace place.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I do is sometimes on conferences, I bring family. And, we'll bring extended family. That's not something I was able to do before, but able to do now. And it's a conscious decision to maintain alignment so that I'm not away all the time.
That's pretty cool.
I believe that you should give back to your community. I think that's actually a responsibility. And so I do that with my kids sometimes, and I do that with Stephanie. And so those are things that we can do together and rally around together. And then we schedule the downtime.
So very deliberate and intentional behavior. I think that's probably the solution to many things. But I think that you make a constant effort to understand that blend or balance or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. That's. I just think that everybody always asks the formula. We've had many guests on this show that are talking about this blend and balance, and I just think that you have to spend time. You're an athlete, right? Practice. You don't get better at something unless you intentionally and deliberately develop a routine where you're constantly reviewing. It's like your estate plan. I'm going to review that every 4 to 5 years.
Right.
Or when there's a major life event, like I have another child, or something happens inside of my family unit, where we're going to visit. Instead of making this intentional plan to do better every time.
Yeah, I love that you bring this up, because there are some owners out there who are married, have kids, present with their family, everything goes perfect, and there are owners out there where it doesn't.
It's totally true, 100%.
In both situations, neither should feel bad, right? And sometimes I feel that we compare our path to other people's path, and you can still benefit from the blend of balance.
Yeah.
And if for some reason you have the pain of loss or the pain of separation, you can still be intentional with your children. You can still be intentional with your ex. You can still be intentional with the new family.
Yeah.
Because I wish that everything was perfect. It is a hard life being an entrepreneur.
It is.
And it takes a special situation for people to be tied to that. And I think there's a broader conversation of how can you be okay in all situations.
I totally agree. So one thing that I think is on my mind, going back to the exit planning world, that I kind of want to maybe conclude with, is being a couple of young guys. I don't know if you still feel young. I can tell you at 37 years old, we were talking about stepping on, I step on the soccer field. And I step on the soccer field in a competitive way every Wednesday, and every Thursday I come to the office at 11 because I am freaking beat up. So I don't feel like
it just takes us longer to recover.
Yeah, it takes us longer to recover. But I think that one of the things going on in our space, in our exit planning world, and really just I would say in the market today, is we see this shift from a focus on the baby boomer business owner, and I'm not saying a shift away, because I think still the 51% of the market is owned by a baby boomer business owner who will, if you didn't think exit planning is here it is, right? That's why the show is Exit is right now. But this shift into a person that's 35, 45, maybe even some of the younger folks in their 20s, and this evolution of the way that they think, the way that they blend or balance their life, the way that they run their business with the eventual exit in mind, the way that they do the estate plan and the financial plan, and making things, as you mentioned earlier on the show, more present, more now, right now. Where do you think, as somebody in this space and a leader in this space, where do you think we're going? Whether it be the profession, whether it be the actual process of exit planning and value acceleration, or literally the business owner marketer, maybe all three, where's this evolution of exit planning headed?
I think the evolution goes on to what's next. So you have the baby boomer population, who some of them may be exiting and starting another business, but I don't know what the statistics are, but some of them are aging where they're no longer going to be able to, or capable to, or have the desire to do the next thing. Yeah. Our age, if we were to exit now, just like I exited, I'm right into the next thing. There's no amount of money that you can pay me where I will not work hard. It's just
It's not a part of who you are. Yeah.
It's not a part of who I am. If I had $1 billion state, maybe I'd be golfing a lot more. But I would still be working my ass off.
Yeah.
And so
feel the same way.
I think exit planning now for our age group will have to include what's the next step. And what's the next business, or what's, if you're in tech, are you exiting and deciding to go into some other place in the market, or are you? We have some serial entrepreneurs who are having multiple businesses, and so it's it's more private equity enabled than anything else. Which exit is completely different.
It is,
and you're looking at different factors, and you're looking at different time frames. And so I think the evolution is, how do we have most people our age understanding that exit is now, because they are actually going to exit now.
I think naturally the people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s will have multiple exits. They'll be like you, or like me, right? Where they exited something. I took a few months off to figure out who the hell I was, and then partnered up with Dad. And I'll probably have multiple, because I'm like you. There's just no way that my eventual transition in from this business will not result in another business or another. I would say, maybe a community activity or something that I can pour my heart into outside of family and the rest of it. One of the things I wrote down might be interesting to hear your perspective on is you're a big college guy, right? We were talking about your estate plan. You got to go to college, all this stuff. I was talking to you about that at breakfast too. Do you ever? Can you see that? You could tell me, Scott. I don't think so. I won't take offense. One of my like big, fat, audacious goal kind of thing, goals, is to have this value acceleration methodology that we know taught in colleges. Do you think that's a part of the evolution?
Absolutely. The earlier you know, the better off you are.
Well, you were talking about the financial planning. Like, I didn't learn about financial planning and money management.
Personal finance should be, that the credit card companies are on campus. Let's have the personal finance companies on campus.
Yeah. So you don't think it's far-fetched to say maybe 10 or 20 years, you could see at least concepts of value acceleration present in the college agendas?
Absolutely.
Very cool. Well, thank you for helping me live my dream, because that would be like, we talk a lot these days about, back in 2005 when EPI was founded, Peter Chrisman and Rich Jackham, our founders, started talking about exit planning conceptually, philosophically. That's what my dad learned. What you learned was when my dad came into this methodology and process to say, okay, this is how we take these concepts and philosophies and put them into action. Now that we're a month or so post-summit, we're saying, Scott, well, what's your legacy? And I think one of my legacies is to start to see people that, like me, who started a business at 16 at their seat in their geometry class, actually know what the hell it means to plan with an exit in mind, or make exit planning more present and focus on that. So,
how about plan with graduation in mind? A freshman should have an exit strategy.
That's true.
Because as a freshman, you can start to say, how much student debt do I want to build up versus the occupation that I'm going to take? What am I going to do when I get my first check? You should be talking about that when you're a freshman. You should get more detailed when you're a senior. I mean, it's a lot of applications. What should you be taking care of from a personal finance thing now, so when your exit from college happens, you live the life that you desire?
Cool.
Should you be working more hours? I think that'd be great.
I'm going to have you back on another episode so we can go down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah.
But hey, man, I really appreciate hanging out on the podcast, coming in from Milwaukee. Maybe I'll see you in a few weeks and up in Summerfest. Thanks everybody for hanging out and listening. We will be back in a couple of weeks. This is where the people behind the glass here that produce the show always laugh at me. We can get the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, on all of your podcasts. It's just, I'm not a big technical guy. Okay. Like, I probably still have one of those old, like, little iPod things that you can kind of tuck in and listen.
I hear those are worth a lot.
See, I feel like, or like when I'm at the gym, I'm literally watching YouTube videos. That's how I listen to my music. They're like, and we were traveling in that RV, I had Pandora on, and they're like, Scott, is there commercials right now? They're like, grow up, dude. But anyways, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.